Ottawa office.
These are the English
That one
ones
is
if you want to
Southwest,
come
eh?
down and sign
We're
these.
going to the Minister of Environment.
Yes, you just give me the $5, so there you go. Thank you so much. Just make sure that you sign the 2 letters. You've done that? Okay, thank you so much.
Ottawa, it's going to be Ottawa.
Bonjour, la belle Hélène.
Okay, we need a name, a signature, and your photograph.
Tiens, il avait 2 dans les mains. Comment ça va, M. Minchin? La vie vous gâte? La vie vous gâte un peu?
Un peu.
Le 5. Oh, yeah, okay.
As you can appreciate, the large Taggart-Miller landfill that is proposed for Boundary Road will forever change the landscape of our communities and who we are as a community. Where we are in the process, now is the time for us to speak up, to let the Minister of the Environment know our concerns as a community, what we're concerned about, and why we don't want this. And we'll be going through that this evening. The areas of topics is we wanted to go over with you where we are in the process. So with the environmental assessment report that we were given at the beginning of January, where we are in the process, what the next steps are. Then we'll go through some of the issues and concerns that our team and experts have found by going through some of this fiction writing that we have here. We're going to be giving you an idea of some of the things that we've been doing on our side, and then what you can do and what you need to do to have your concerns. Make sure the ministry knows what your concerns are. As I said, we're going to go through the process. We're going to take you through some of the issues and concerns. But before we start, we just had a very important person walk in, and I'm glad he's here. Our councillor, Stephen Blatt, because I think it's important that Steve explain, kind of the city's involvement and what the city's doing while we have him here, so I don't make things up as we're going. So I'm going to put him on the spot. He has no idea he was doing this, but I'm sure being in his position, he's used to that by now. But anyway, Steve, we want to give you an opportunity to address the community, given this very important portfolio, and I'm really glad you're here. It kind of shows your support for us in this campaign, so I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thanks Sue and Lori and all the other volunteers who are volunteering with the organization of Dump This, Dump 2, and for all of you for coming out on pretty cold night out there. So thank you for your interest in the community. So as you know, Taggart-Miller is undergoing an provincial class environmental assessment for their waste management facility, or their dump. So this is controlled by the province of Ontario, but the City of Ottawa has been providing feedback at the various stages and has provided $75,000 to the organizers of Dump This Dump to hire various experts, and Sue and Lori can tell you exactly what kind of experts they've hired and what for. But it's basically to help the community look at the documents, because that's a lot, and a lot of it's technical jargon that if you're not a geotechnician or an engineer or some other person who spent a lot longer in school than I did can really understand quickly. To hire those experts to look for the flaws in the argument that's being made by the applicant, flaws in the science, flaws in the assumptions, and point those out to the province to hopefully ensure that the Minister of the Environment doesn't sign the approval letter that he would be required to sign. So that's where things are right now. The City of Ottawa is very much of the mind that municipalities, whether it's Ottawa or any other municipality, should handle its own waste. And therefore, we don't want to ship our garbage to other cities, and we don't want other cities shipping their garbage here. And obviously, with our investments in organics and recycling, we would prefer to well, if we can, make money off of our garbage, and if not, reuse and divert as much of it out of landfill as humanly possible. So the City of Ottawa is very much of that mind that that's the approach and direction we want to take, and we're very hopeful that the province won't approve this EA.
Perfect. I got a question, Steve, just before you leave. At this point, because it affects the city a lot, I mean the local community a lot, with regards to traffic, as part of this EA, is the city looking at that? You know, where you've got the facility, by the way, for those who have gone through these details, the proponent, or Taggart Miller, are looking at 43 trucks going in and out of the facility, so that's 86 trucks an hour coming off that Boundary Road interchange. I know we had an awareness campaign last year where we stood 2 to 4 o'clock, you know, just waving to let people know, and I think in that couple-hour period there was quite a few, several hundred vehicles going through at that point in time.
15 minutes.
200
In 15 minutes.
200 vehicles in 15 minutes, now added with the 86 trucks an hour on average that are going to be coming in, plus the trailer park, or the truck stop that they're planning right at the corner of Boundary Road. Is the city looking at that whole traffic and what that's going to do in that interchange?
Yeah, so traffic gets looked at the point of the application for land designation. So for the truck stop, for example, and the subdivision that, because it's not just the truck stop, it's a whole industrial subdivision, the applicant has to show the use that's going to go in that subdivision, what the volume of traffic they think is going to be there, where it's coming from, the kind and shape, et cetera, and then our traffic guys look at it. Taggart Miller would have to provide that. It's part of the EA, but in a more detailed, rigorous way, if they got approved for the EA, as they go through the site plan and zoning stages of the process, we would get more details on the traffic. And if whether it's this project, or say if you're building a condo, or if you're building a subdivision, if what you're doing necessitates the changing of the road, then typically, not always, but typically it's your requirement to fund that as the business or the applicant that's going to be making money off whatever you're doing. So that'll all get looked at as the steps continue down, so to speak.
Okay.
Yeah. But I guess my question is, if the city is truly like backing the dump system and not the dump itself, then let's say they get approved with the EA, who's to say the city should just be like, well, we're not rezoning? Like, why do you guys even think that?
Well, so we're required by law to receive an application that someone's made and paid for. So if you want to apply to change your house into a spaceport, right, which is crazy, and you paid your $36,000 or whatever the fee is, we would be required to look at your studies and go through that process, because the $36,000 pays for all that process, right? So once they get the approval, they have to do an official plan amendment, they have to do a zoning change, they have to do a site plan. I'm not going to support any of that. I would hope that my colleagues would be there at the same time. In all honesty, though, if the Ministry of the Environment says yes and the city says no, Taggart will go to the Ontario Municipal Board and more than likely win. Right? It's not a reason for us not to say no, right? But if you look, we said no to an apartment building in Sandy Hill that's 9 stories high about 6 months ago, and the OMB overturned it last week. So those decisions that sometimes we make because that's what the community wants us to do, the courts and people who are dispassionate, right, because they're not affiliated with the community in any way, they overturn it for one reason or another. So if it gets to that point, then I think the community and me and everyone, we have to have a discussion. Is it worth going down that path and fighting, or are there things we can extract that, whether it's improvements to the road or anything else? That's a discussion that I hope we don't have to get to, because I hope the province doesn't say yes to it. But those are tactics that we can get into if the province does what we hope they don't do. So it's not going to be your garbage or my garbage that goes there. This is from construction sites and hospitals and grocery stores and all these other places. That's all regulated by the province. We've asked the province, okay, it might be okay, small towns might not be able to handle regulating that, but we think we can regulate it in Ottawa. They told us no. So they, on the environmental side, get to make those decisions. At that point, as a landowner, the company gets to follow the rights that any other landowner has in terms of their application. Again, we can say no, right? And every time we say no, they have a chance to go to court and get the court to overturn it. Right? That's just the property rights that you enjoy as a landowner in Ontario, they enjoy as a landowner in Ontario. As much as that might be frustrating, and it's frustrating to be sure. But again, that's a conversation we don't want to ever have to have, because we want the province to say no to it before we get there, right? So that's why we have to analyze this, right? That's why we gave the money for the experts to look at this and find the reasons why this site doesn't make sense for what they're proposing. Yeah.
Yeah, I have just, what you identified is, I think, what every one of us here thinks. How can we be in this situation where it's just such an obvious thing and people don't want it? How could it be that something like this could unfold and end up thrown at us, whether we want it or not? And that's been one of the eye-opening and frustrating things I've experienced going through this whole process, is that the system in fact works that way, that the community can be against it, that our leaders can be against it, our elected representatives can speak out and say we don't like this, and there's a process that marches on anyways. I would like to see that worked on. I think that we can do better than that, but at least right now, that is in fact the situation, and so we're doing our part, and I think Mr. Blais is exactly on the money. What he's getting at is that the chance to stop this, our best chance, is right now around the approval of this EA. What we have to make sure is that the Ministry of the Environment does not approve that document. That's what we have to do.
Truck stops and something like that would support the dump or the landfill. Those haven't been approved yet. They're going through the process. But could you explain to us that the process of getting those people the water, obviously if they're going to put a subdivision there?
Sure. So there's going to be a public meeting coming up on that shortly. I want to meet with the guys to make sure that they're at a point that I think their presentation is good enough to show you, and then we're going to schedule a date, and there's going to be a public meeting both on the subdivision and on the water. So February, it is scheduled. Okay, it's February 18th. Perfect.
Here.
Yeah. The applicant. Yeah, so anytime, just like if you wanted the City of Ottawa water to come from the treatment plant to your place, if you said I've got the $20 million to do it, we'd probably say yes, right? Like so the applicant would pay for that. So what's happened is the industrial park that's kind of between the Taggart site and the road, the landowners in there have put a subdivision request in, and that's to create it to actually make use of the industrial park. The reason that's really started is that there is a need in Ottawa for a long haul truck stop. That's those double hitched trailers. They can't go into the city, so they need a truck stop on the outside of cities to let off one of the hitches, go make the deliveries, come back, grab the second one, and go and do their business, right? And there is a need in Ottawa for that. We don't actually have one, and it's a great spot. It's on the highway. It's close to downtown. It's close to Orleans. That's why that industrial park is there, right? And it brings jobs and taxes and money and all the other stuff. So they're planning the whole subdivision, though, because they have to show the city, okay, great, you want to do a truck stop, but what does the rest of your land look like, right? So they're going to divide it into however many lots, and they're going to have a road, and they're going to show all that. They think that maybe for the truck stop, but certainly for the other types of activity, they want to have the trickle feed system come in so that they can have drinking water for people that will be using those businesses. So the trickle feed system, like at your houses, if you do this, I'm not going to tell anyone, but you're not supposed to use it to wash your car or water your lawn and that kind of thing, right? It's supposed to be for your internal house purposes. The same thing would be the case for the businesses. It would be for drinking water, and I've actually suggested they should go to gray water for the washrooms because you don't need to use good drinking water in toilets and stuff like that. So that's what that's for, and that will bring jobs and tax revenue and growth and development into the area. And all that stuff is how we pay for improvements, whether it's to roads or parks or community centers or whatever else.
Normally, truck stops, they have showers, truck drivers.
Yeah, exactly. So
That's a lot of water.
they want water, right?
A
So
lot of water for the trickle system.
they have to prove that the capacity is there, right, before it can get approved. So they have to show us that based on how much water and the capacity of the system, plus, remember, we just changed the rules so that if you're already in the area for trickle feed, you can sever and connect in your new lot. If you're already in the area, we know there's capacity to do that. They have to show that even after every person who has by right the chance to do that, even after all of them do that, that they have enough capacity to handle whatever it is that they want to do with the water. So before their application gets approved, they have to demonstrate that, and they have to pay for it. So a public meeting, February 18th, I guess they scheduled it recently, and I'm sure it's here.
February 18th,
7 to 9,
p.m.
yeah.
here.
And it's on both. It's on the subdivision and it's on the water. And they just changed their water application. Originally, it also included extension down
Carlsbad Lane.
down Carlsbad Lane, but also down
Russell.
Russell Road a little bit. Now it's basically just just getting it down into the business park.
What was the reason for the change?
It doesn't make a lot of sense in turn. They have to have a valve open at the end. It doesn't make sense. Yeah.
I'll ask it next.
Yeah.
What kind of capacity are they going to have? I run out of water on the trickle system if I have a party.
Yeah.
So how are they going to operate a commercial area?
Well, so that's what they have to prove, right? That's what they have to demonstrate to the city. And that's a better question asked on the 18th when the city engineers are here, because they're the ones that do the technical approvals of those kinds of things, right? I'm not an engineer. I know when I run out of water I run out of hot water at the house, it's a pain. I understand that many people have capacity issues with their systems. That's what the city guys need to know or need to hear, because when I raised that question with them shortly before Christmas, the guy who had worked on this thing since the 90s when it went in had said he had never heard that feedback before. So that's the kind of, there's lots of reasons why that might or might not have happened, but it's important that you tell these guys how it actually works in real life, not just what the numbers when you do some math over at City Hall equal out to, right? A lot of the time it's different.
Yeah. Would it be reasonable if people contacted your office so that you at least heard what they experienced?
Yeah, and certainly if you regularly run out of water, right, a party might be a different scenario, but if you're regularly day-to-day use running out of water, that's the kind of thing, please email me about that, because I can feed that in. Like if you're not available on the 18th or you're too shy to come or whatever the reason is, please just send it to me. I can pass that information along. If they don't know that people are facing those kinds of issues, then we don't know how to fix it or how to address it. Same thing, if I don't know guys are running that stop sign over there, I don't know to ask the police to go and do enforcement. The more we know, the more we can make better decisions.
And isn't this essentially the carrot that Taggart is dangling in front of the city's nose? That we'll extend water here and we'll do this intersection work there and so on? No,
the truck stop's not owned by Taggart. It's owned by another company.
I know who it's owned by, but they're all in a group together. The what do they call? Boundary Road Landowners Association. It's their application.
But the water is not going into the Taggart site, right?
Well, they don't need it. It's a dump.
No, exactly. So, but I guess my point is, whether Taggart was helping to pay for that study or not, I think the applicant would have done the study, because they've owned the land and they want to extract value out of the land by building this truck stop. They had spoken about the development of this site. They bought the land before, I'm pretty sure, Taggart, because I'm pretty sure I spoke to them before, at least I knew about the Taggart site. I know Lori knew about the Taggart site about a week before I did, so maybe some of you guys did too, but they've had it for a while. right? If you own a piece of land for a bunch of years, you want to eventually extract some value out of it.
A single report. This is not multiple copies. This is one copy of the environmental assessment that Taggart Miller delivered on January 2nd. January 2nd, it's available for 7 weeks for the public and any interested parties to take a look at and provide their comments. There's going to be different government agencies involved in reviewing this, school boards involved in reviewing this. We, of course, are being reviewing this, and any one of you can go through it as well. It is quite voluminous. It is quite technical. There's a lot of information in there. But Volume 1 is the summary. It's the overview. So if you want a little bit lighter reading, it's one of these larger volumes over here. Anyways, we have 7 weeks to review this, which is to February 20th. So any comments and concerns have to be into the ministry by February 20th. We'll give you a little bit of a synopsis later on how you can accomplish that and do that. After that, once the comments go in, the minister's staff takes it. So the staff over at the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change review it, and they prepare a report. So they have 5 weeks to prepare their report on the environmental assessment that was done, all the public consultation, the comments, the concerns, everything like that. Once they do that, we, the public, then have 5 weeks to review kind of their synopsis summary, what they've put together. I'm assuming they're going to put concerns or, some objective comments in there. We have another 5-week review period in that case. So that's going to be really the month of April through to the beginning of May. After that, they're going to take the input, the final input from the public, and the minister himself then has 13 weeks to review all of that material and to make a decision. As Councillor Blanc indicated, it is the Ministry of the Environment provincially that is going to make the decision, the minister himself, who's going to either approve, reject, or otherwise deal with this report. What is critical at this point in time is the environmental assessment has not been signed off. Now's the time to stop them. Now's the time to do that, not when it's going through court and legal and arbitration and stuff like that. While the City of Ottawa can stand up and Mayor Watson has said no, our councillors have said no, our local MPPs have said no, the community has said no. We, the community, if we get together and we do strong pushback, we have the power to stop this, but it's going to take all of us. It's not going to be a handful of us that can stop this. So if we collectively stand together and they get piles of paper saying no to this, we do have the opportunity to stop this. Okay. So that's a little bit about the process and where we're in. That's why we convene the community today, because we are at a critical step in this process. In the environmental assessment report, as I've indicated, a lot of it is technical there. So we have, through money provided by the City of Ottawa, hired some very key, important scientific people. So we have hired a biologist to take a look at species at risk, aquatic life, and all of that, to provide an assessment of the review done by Taggart Miller and to provide input on that as to how it's going to impact, what it's going to impact, moose population, beaver, how it's going to impact the environment. So we have a biologist, PhD accredited, who's reviewing that for us. We have a hydrogeologist. He is a scientist, world renowned, has been doing this for a long time. Absolutely flawless credentials, who's taking a look at this at a very, very detailed level. We were very lucky to come across him and that he has the opportunity and the time to work on this for us. He did do a review earlier in the year. We got a draft version of this summer that we took a look at. And he took a look at it at a very critical, looking at it from a scientific. And what his comments are, he did provide a 6-page preliminary report. Now we're looking at the final report and the final thing, where he was saying there's a lot of data. In that particular report, there's a lot of general assumptions that are just broadly based on no scientific, no real data underpinning to justify making some of those comments. And that's what our other experts are seeing in other areas as well. Anyways, we do have that hydrogeology report because to us in the area, water is key. We also have an engineering firm with geologists who are familiar with the site and the Leda clay, taking a look at this as well, providing their comments on that as well. We've also engaged Cenis, which are an environmental company. They are taking a look at the overall approach. They've been involved in many environmental assessments to make sure due diligence was done. All of the key government departments and key areas out there have been contacted, key organizations, Ministry of Transport and who have you, to provide input on that. Ministry of Northern Development and Mines. And so Cenis is looking at it from the overall approach process to make sure due diligence was done and it was done right. Then what Cenis is also doing, they're into the environmental stream. They're actually doing an air quality review for us. So they're looking at our concerns of the air, and Lori will get into some of that. So they are looking at that side of things, because according to the Taggart Miller at this point in time, air quality is going to be fantastic right at the boundary of the dump. It's going to be okay on the other side of the road. Don't know if any of you have been near a dump lately, but seems to extend a little bit longer than that. So those are some of the experts that we have managed to hire who have gone through the more technical aspects, providing us a report which we'll be putting together along with your comments to the Ministry of the Environment, and we have to submit that by February 20th. But what Lori's going to share with you guys today is a couple of things that we've done, a couple of, some of our key areas and concerns that we have that we've brought out through this.
Okay, so I haven't read through the whole thing, I confess, but I have gotten through part of it, yeah. And I guess the first point is it's an intimidating amount of stuff, but it's worth tackling at least some of it, even if you can't foresee yourself getting through all of it. Take a look at the first volume, if possible, or part of it. And I think if everybody takes a chunk, you might be able to find all kinds of things. Anyway, some of what we found while we've been looking at it. The first important point is, in case you didn't catch this already, there is a landfill. If you were to just start reading at the beginning, especially if you saw their early presentations, it was all about the recycling. There is a recycling component, but the biggest part of what this project is a landfill. And you're like, well, Lori, that's obvious. We all know this. You'd be surprised who we talk to that doesn't know this. There have been numerous politicians that we've talked to, and they ask us, well, why are you so upset? It's a recycling center. What's the problem? And we're like, no, the recycling is fine, but that's not the big thing here. It's not a 450-acre recycling center, right? They have all that land because it's actually a large landfill. And if you read everything, you'll find that out. But if you just look at the quick blurbs that go around, it's not that obvious. So that's an important point. People need to understand this is all about a landfill, a very, very large landfill. It would be the biggest one in the city. Presently, just for reference, the landfill at Carp Road, right? What's the nickname for the landfill at Carp Road? Carp Mountain, yeah. It's a 100-acre footprint. This one, this is a 400-acre site. So ponder what that looks like. Another thing about this, so when we do talk about diversion, what they mean there is garbage comes to the site and some of it's going to get landfilled, but we're going to try and sort out some of this stuff so it doesn't go in the landfill. And that goes all different ways, right? The recycling is your glass and your metal and all those things. But what about the stuff that rots? A big component here that they're putting forward is we'll take the stuff that can rot, the organics, and we're going to process those separately, if we can. So that only works if the stuff comes in separated, because nobody's going to pick through a garbage that comes from Tim Hortons and pick out the half-done donuts and recycle those separately, right? That doesn't happen. So this is if it's separated already, we'll take that stuff and we'll do something with it. And this is a concern I've come up with in here is the way they talk about processing that is kind of open-ended. Maybe there's a thing in there that says maybe at some point some of this will be trucked to a local farm, but maybe not. And I have a problem with the maybes, because this is a document that's supposed to say how their operation will impact us. Well, how do I know what the impact is if they haven't really decided what the operation is? If it's maybe going here or maybe going there. Also, when it comes to the liquid that comes out of these processes, the liquid out the bottom of the dump is called leachate, all that kind of stuff. Maybe it gets trucked to Greens Creek, the wastewater treatment for Ottawa. But if the city doesn't want it to go there, then maybe it doesn't. This is all what this document says. I'm like, well, then how are we supposed to have a handle and understand what the impact is for us? If it doesn't get trucked off site and they treat it and then let it loose in the ditch, that's a completely different impact than if it all gets taken away. If it does get partially treated, if it's sitting in an open pond for a while, does that pond stink? I've heard they do. How about when they suck it out of the pond into the truck and take it away? Does that stink? I've heard that does too. So there's all these different things, but in order to really say what the impacts are, a document like that needs to be pretty firm and pretty decisive about what the plan is. The fact that it's still got loose ends that's a huge red flag for me, because how am I supposed to say if I think that impact is acceptable or not when you don't know what you're doing yet?
One of the things that we've always, kind of uncovered through this process, we've always been talking about the recycling. And I guess what gets us is, this is really far from a recycling center. So we've always, right now, this is the industrial and commercial construction waste that's coming in here, right? It's not residential waste. The provincial average for recycling is sitting at about 13, 14, 15%. The rest is landfill. So we've always used those numbers, because what Taggart Miller has to do here is it's contracted garbage pickup. So with you, construction company A or, industry B, I'm going to contract to pick up your garbage. So I don't exactly know what it is. That's why they can't come up with their numbers right now. So we were using, roughly 13%, 15%, things like that. In black and white, in this study, they put in there, so where they're saying lofty goals, that they wanted to achieve 50% when they were talking to you at various open houses and stuff like that. In black and white, recycling for the industrial, or what they call IC&I waste stream. So not the organics, not the contaminated soil, but the construction, demolition, and that, 16%. We weren't that far off. And that's their long-term goal, ultimate, what they aspire to recycle, not what they will be recycling on day one, which is why Lori came about saying, let's be real, this is about a dump, it's about a landfill, it's not about a recycling